My dad left Lebanon in, I believe, 1919 as a single guy looking for America. And he lived at the top of a mountain, and my mother's family lived kind of in a lower valley, slightly lower. So on his way out of town, so to speak, he saw my grandmother, who was pregnant, and said, "If you have a girl, I'll come back and marry her." Okay. So he's off to America for 20 years. She has a girl. He comes back and he marries her 20 years later.
Yeah.
Okay. And started a family in Lebanon where I was conceived but not born. I was born here.
Okay.
Okay, anyway, so they get married, they pack up, they come to Detroit, and on this ditty, of course, when I was born, I was in the Delray Hospital down on by Jefferson Avenue in this neighborhood. And the family gave my mother a really nice piece of lace from Lebanon. While she was in the hospital, it was stolen.
Wow.
So now when it comes to him to being born, they said, "We're not going to the hospital. We're going to do it in their bedroom."
Yeah.
Which I remember vividly. "What are you doing in the bedroom?" I'm what, 3 years old, and they're doing the backroom stuff.
Wow.
So that's the story of why he was born in the bedroom.
I was born at home, whereas he was born in the hospital. Well, initially, when he arrived here in the United States, again, he had followed his brother, and his brother worked in a potato chip factory.
Oh.
And so my father's first job was in a potato chip factory, working along with his brother. But subsequently, what he did was he furthered his education and learned a trade and became a tool and die maker, and worked initially at Ford Motor Company for a number of years, and then subsequently at Turnstead, part of General Motors. And so he was a tool and die maker and had taught himself a trade. And what was kind of interesting is, again, because he was an immigrant, some of his superiors didn't think he would, quote, be qualified to be a tool and die maker. And he said, "I'll show them." And he did. and so actually what while he's a tool and die maker, one of the things that he focused on was developing a small window that would be on the cars, on the passenger side as well as the driver's side. And the front window, at that time, the window was two parts. They'd have a small...
Called the vent.
The vent. They'd have a small vent and then the larger window. And so he was designing that vent.
But early as a tool and die maker, he worked at the Fleetwood plant, which was Cadillac, which had been retooled for the war effort. So during the war, he was working 6 and 7 days for the war effort. And so he made money because of overtime. And you knew that because we'd buy a refrigerator one week and later on we'd buy something else. But he learned his trade at a great time when the country really needed it. And then, of course, he stayed with it.
And my mother became a seamstress, and my father, so together, they would make suits for us and clothes for us as we were growing up. And again, that subsequently led my mother to become a seamstress, and she worked for a Federal Department Store, a major store here in Detroit, for over 20 years, I think it was, and as a seamstress. And incidentally, she worked And that's an interesting story. First of all, not a lot of women worked outside. Many women stayed in the home and to help raise their children. But my mother not only helped raised us, but she went to work, again, as a seamstress for over 20 years until Federal Department Store actually kind of went out of business. And then she worked in the deli, Farmer Jack's, for another, 20 years or 25 years, something of that nature.
She was 83,
Yep.
full-time.
Full-time.
Wow.
And she would have worked longer if it wasn't for dementia.
Yeah, exactly. And so, we hear so much today about feminism and women. I always say my mother was a feminist before the word was even commonly used, because she was the type of person where you didn't say, you can't do this. And because she would say, oh, yes, I can, and I will show you. And that included learning to drive when it wasn't common for women to be driving.
And it was against Dad's orders.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, my father would go to work, and she would. She hired somebody to come and teach her how to drive, and so that she had her license. And that's the same thing when she went to work. That was unheard of at that time. And
She had a job and was going to work, and my dad didn't know it.
that's right.
But she was going to do what she wanted to do.
Oh, like I said, she was a feminist before the word was commonly used, and she not only she became a union leader when she was working at Federals and representing other employees within there, and she was the type and she would do things right, and wasn't asking for anything special, but she's not the type of person where you would say, you can't do this. She'd say, no, I can, and I will show you.
I'm going to Detroit City.